The message came harshly, without kindness or warning, not at all like you'd expect from your own family. It felt like a decision already made, talked about, and agreed upon without me knowing. My name is Skylar, and I'm 32. Just 10 minutes ago, I thought I was the one holding my family together. I thought my hard work, my money, and my sleepless nights were what kept our family business alive. I was wrong. It was a heavy, sticky Sunday night, common in South Carolina. I was on my plain couch, the one with an old coffee stain I hadn't had time to clean. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at my finance job, the one that paid my bills, and I was staring at the ceiling, too tired to shower. The TV was on low, playing a show I wasn't watching, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a strong buzz, not a call, but a text. I picked it up without thinking much. I figured it was just work or my mom, Margaret, worrying about a food delivery for the family restaurant. I unlocked the phone and the bright screen hurt my tired eyes. It was a message from our family group chat. The chat was called Anchor Team, a name I came up with 3 years ago to make everyone feel better about working together. My dad, Harrison, had sent a message. I read it once, then blinked, rubbed my eyes, and read it again. The words stayed the same, sharp and final. Skylar, we've talked about the future of the Rusty Anchor restaurant, and we've decided we don't need your help anymore. You should leave for now. There was no hello, no how are you, and certainly no thank you. Just a clear, cold order to remove myself from a business I had supported with my money and feelings for 3 hard, long years. I sat up straight, my heart beating fast like a bird stuck in my chest. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type so many things. I wanted to yell. I wanted to ask, who is we? I wanted to ask, do you even know what I did for you just this week? But before I could type a single letter, I saw 3 dots, meaning someone else was typing. I waited. It was my mother. Surely she would make this softer. Surely she would step in and say, Harrison, that's too mean, or Skylar, let's talk about this over dinner. The dots disappeared. Margaret said nothing. She didn't type a single word. Her silence felt heavier than any mean thing she could have said. It was a silence that showed she was in on the plan. She wasn't confused. She was part of it. Then the final painful hit came. A new message popped up below my father's text. My younger sister, Kennedy, hadn't typed anything to defend me. She hadn't asked any questions. She had simply reacted to my father's message with an emoji. It was the celebration emoji, a little yellow face with a party hat and a noisemaker, surrounded by colorful confetti. I stared at that tiny picture, a party hat for me being fired. That one small symbol said more than any long message ever could. It told me that my removal wasn't a sad thing they had to do. It was a victory for them. They weren't just letting me go. They were happy I was leaving. I felt a cold feeling spread through me, starting at my fingertips and reaching my chest. It wasn't sadness. Sadness feels warm and messy. This was clear thinking. It felt cold and sharp. I realized in that moment that I had been fighting for people who secretly wanted me to lose. I refused to argue with them publicly. I refused to beg for a place I had earned through years of hard work. I took a deep breath, breathing in the still air of my apartment, and typed my answer. I kept it short, calm, and final. I'll respect that and step away from the family entirely. I hit send. Then I put my phone face down on the table. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady. I drank it slowly, feeling the cool liquid go down my throat. Then I walked to my bedroom and sat at my desk. It was time to work. Not for them. For me. I opened my laptop. The screen turned on, lighting up the darkroom. I went to my bank's website. My fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, typing my username and the complicated password I changed every 3 months. A special code was sent to my phone for security. I typed in the code. My bank account showed up. There it was, the business savings account. This account was in my name. It was built with my credit. It was filled with my savings, my extra work money, and the money my grandfather left me. This account was the guarantee for all the loans the Rusty Anchor restaurant currently used. I looked at the amount, $320,000. $320,000. That number wasn't just figures on a screen. It was my life. It was the house I didn't buy. It was the vacations I didn't take. It was the retirement money I hadn't started saving. It was every skipped lunch and every extra hour I had worked for the last 5 years. I had put that money there to protect them, to stop suppliers from cutting them off, to keep the bank from taking their building. I had let them use it as a shield. But shields are for soldiers, not for enemies. I clicked on the transfer button. I chose the business savings account as the place where the money would come from. I chose my personal savings account as the place where the money would go. I typed in the amount, 320000. The screen asked, "Are you sure you want to transfer $320,000? I paused for just 1 second. I thought about my father's text. I thought about my mother's silence. And I thought about that little party hat emoji Kennedy had tapped so easily. I clicked confirm. A green check mark appeared. Transaction pending. I didn't stop there. I went to the authorized users section. I saw my father's name. I clicked remove. I saw Kennedy's name, which I had foolishly added last month so she could buy emergency social media ads. I clicked remove. I saw the automatic link to the restaurant's payroll system. I clicked disconnect. I spent the next hour carefully taking apart the money safety net I had built around them. I took back every digital key, every shared password, and every connected credit card. I did it with the carefulness of a doctor removing something harmful. By the time I closed my laptop, it was midnight. The silence in my apartment felt different now. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I had just fired my family, and for the first time in years, I could breathe easily. The next morning, the sun rose just like always, but the world felt clearer. I woke up at 7 a.m., showered, and put on my best dark blue suit. I didn't check the family group chat. I didn't check the security cameras at the restaurant, a habit I had for the last 3 years. I drove straight to downtown Charleston. I parked my car and walked into the office of Callum, my lawyer. Callum was an old friend of my grandfather. He was a man who didn't say much, with gray hair and a suit that always looked more expensive than my car. He had helped me set up the legal papers for my work with the restaurant years ago, papers my father always called unnecessary. When I walked into his office, Callum looked up from his big wooden desk. He saw my face, took off his reading glasses, and pointed to the chair across from him. "Skylar," he said, his voice serious. "You're here early. Is it the audit?" "No, Callum," I said, sitting down and putting my phone on his desk. "It's over. They fired me by text message last night." Callum's eyebrows went up slightly. That was the most emotion I had ever seen from him. "Fired? You're not an employee, Skylar. You're the guarantor. They seem to have forgotten that." I said, "I took out the guarantee money last night. The $320,000 is back in my personal account. I need you to make it official." Callum leaned back in his leather chair. He put his fingertips together and looked at me for a long time. "If you do this, Skylar," he said softly, "the problems will start very fast. Without that reserve money, the bank will demand their loans back within 30 days. The suppliers will require cash when they deliver immediately. It will be a disaster." "I know," I said, my voice steady, "but I am done being the only thing stopping them from disaster. I want a complete break. I want a legal document saying that I have absolutely no part, no responsibility, and no power in the Rusty Anchor. Starting right now." Callum nodded slowly. "Smart. If the ship is sinking, you don't want to be tied to it." We spent the next 2 hours writing the document. It was called Notice of Stopping Support and Involvement. It was cold. It was professional. It was very clear and powerful. I wrote that I was ending every legal and money role connected to the business. I wrote that I was taking back any unofficial duties. I clearly stated that I would not be available for advice, money talks, managing the business, or emergency funding. Callum looked over the final paper. "You know," he said softly, "most people would have called screaming. You're doing this with a lot of dignity, Skylar." "Dignity is expensive, Callum," I replied. "I just got a refund of $320,000 on mine." I signed the papers with a smooth, firm hand. Callum quickly scanned them and put them in an email. I added Harrison and Kennedy to the email list. I didn't add a subject like "screw you." I simply titled it Formal Notice. I hit send at exactly 10:00 in the morning. I walked out of Callum's office into the bright sunlight. I felt light. I felt calm. I realized I hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday, so I walked to a nearby cafe and ordered a bagel and coffee. I sat by the window watching people hurry by, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel the need to hurry with them. I was free. But as I sat there, I knew the story wasn't over. In fact, for them, the nightmare was just beginning. To understand why I could leave with such cold precision, you have to understand what I got involved with 3 years ago. You have to understand what a dying restaurant smells like. 3 years ago, the Rusty Anchor wasn't just having problems, it was falling apart. I was living in Boston at the time, working as a new analyst, building a life far away from the sticky weather and family drama. But then the calls started coming, not asking for money at first, just complaining. "The suppliers are thieves," my father would say on the phone. "The customers don't have good taste anymore," my mother would sigh. I came home for a visit in July, and what I saw broke my heart. The restaurant, which had been my grandfather's great joy, looked old and tired. The paint was peeling. The sign out front had a light bulb burned out, so it just read "The Rusty." But the real horror was in the back office. One night, after my parents had gone home, I went into the office to check my email. The desk was a complete mess. Unopened envelopes were stacked in tall, shaky piles. I opened one. "Final notice, electricity." I opened another. "Past due, Seafood Distributors Incorporated." I started digging. I pulled out drawers that were stuck shut with papers. I found bills from 6 months ago. I found tax notices that hadn't even been opened. It was pure chaos. It was like their denial had taken a physical form. My father, Harrison, had been running the place based on his charm and old memories. He was the kind of man who would buy a $500 bottle of fancy whiskey to celebrate a good Tuesday, while the ice maker was broken and leaking water onto the floor. He refused to look at financial reports. He called them negative energy. My mother, Margaret, was no better. She treated the business like a place to hang out with friends. She would give free meals to her friends, give away free wine to neighbors, and then wonder why the cash register had so little money at the end of the night. I couldn't watch it die. That was my mistake. I cared too much about the history, about the family name on the door. So I moved back. I didn't tell them I was coming to save them. I told them I wanted a change of pace. I kept my job in Boston but switched to working from home. That's when my double life began. By day, I was Skylar the analyst, attending video meetings and creating financial plans for big companies. By night, I was Skylar the fixer. I put $50,000 of my own money into the restaurant in that first month just to stop the losses. I paid off the electricity bill so the lights wouldn't be turned off during dinner. I paid the seafood supplier who was threatening to sue us. I didn't make a big show of it. I didn't want to hurt my father's sensitive ego. I just paid the bills and filed the receipts. When the supplier truck started showing up on time again, Harrison proudly puffed out his chest. "See," he told me, slapping the counter, "I told that guy to get his act together. You just have to be firm with people, Skylar." I bit my tongue. I didn't tell him that the only reason that guy was back was because I had wired him $12,000 from my personal savings account that morning. "You're right, Dad," I said. "You handled it." That was the pattern. They made a mess, I fixed it, and they took the credit. By the second year, I wasn't just paying bills. I was running the whole operation. I changed the menu, cutting the dishes that weren't making money. I talked to the landlord and got a better lease, using my own good credit score to help. I set up a new sales system so we could actually keep track of what we had in stock. I worked 18-hour days. My social life disappeared. I didn't have any dates. I was 30 years old, single, and so tired. But it was working. The numbers started turning green. The debt was getting smaller. The dining room was full again. Then came the seafood crisis. It was a Tuesday in November. Our main shrimp supplier, a man named Mr. Henderson, called me. He was yelling. Apparently, a check my father had signed had bounced, meaning it didn't have enough money. "I'm cutting you off, Skylar," Henderson yelled. "And I'm telling every other supplier in Charleston that the Rusty Anchor doesn't pay its bills." "Please, Mr. Henderson," I begged, walking back and forth in the alley behind the kitchen. "It was a mistake. I'll wire you the money right now, plus an extra 10% for being late." "I don't want your wire," he spat. I want a guarantee. I want to know that if this place goes out of business, I still get my 40 grand. That was the night I opened the investment account, the one with $320,000. I moved all the money my grandfather left me into a secure account and signed a paper giving the bank, and indirectly our main creditors, a claim on it if the business failed to pay. It was the ultimate safety net. It was my future promised for their present. When I told my parents what I had done, expecting maybe a hug or a tearful thank you, my mother just nodded and said, "Well, that's good. Now we don't have to worry about those nasty phone calls." My father didn't even say thank you. He just looked at the paper and asked, "Does this mean we can order the prime rib again?" I should have left then. I should have packed my bags and run. But I told myself we were almost there. Just one more good year and the business would be able to run itself. Then I could step back. I was a fool. Then came Kennedy. My sister Kennedy is 26. She is pretty, charming, and completely hates hard work. She had spent the last 4 years finding herself in California, which mostly seemed to involve taking pictures of avocado toast and asking our parents for rent money. She moved back home 6 months ago, and just like that, everything changed. Kennedy didn't care about how much food cost or worker laws. She cared about the vibe. She decided the restaurant needed a new look. "The Rusty Anchor is so old," she announced at a family dinner, picking at her food. "We need to be the anchor, simple, stylish." My father's eyes lit up. He loved new things. He loved shiny objects. "That's a great idea, sweetheart," he said. "It costs money to change the brand," I said quietly from the end of the table. "New signs, new menus, new uniforms. We're talking $20,000 minimum. We just started making a profit again. We should save that money for the slow season." The table went silent. Kennedy rolled her eyes. "You're always so negative, Skylar," she said. "You act like money is the only thing that matters. You have no vision." "Vision doesn't pay for the shrimp, Kennedy," I snapped. "Enough!" My father slammed his hand on the table. "Skylar, stop discouraging your sister. She has fresh ideas. You've been working on the numbers so long you've lost sight of the big picture." I lost sight. I was the only one looking at the real picture. Everyone else was looking at a fantasy, but they went ahead with it. Kennedy took over the marketing. She spent $5,000 on a launch party that brought in exactly 0 repeat customers. She hired her friends to be brand ambassadors, which meant they ate free food and posted selfies. And the worst part, my parents loved it. They loved the attention. They loved seeing Kennedy being the center of the room. I became the bad guy. I was the one who ruined the fun. I was the one saying no to the expensive champagne. I was the one asking why the laundry bill was double what it should be. I started to notice the secret meetings. I would walk into the restaurant and see my father, mother, and Kennedy huddled in a booth with the general manager. When they saw me, they would stop talking. "What's going on?" I'd ask. "Just brainstorming," Kennedy would say with a tight smile. I felt it slipping away. The respect, if it ever truly existed, was gone. I was just the money bag. I was the ATM machine that sometimes talked back. One evening, about a week before the text message, I overheard them in the kitchen. I had come in through the back door quietly to check the inventory. My father was talking to the head chef. "Yeah, Kennedy is really taking charge now," he said, his voice full of pride. "She's got a natural instinct for this business. Skylar is good with the spreadsheets, but she's not a leader. She's too rigid." "Too rigid," I whispered to myself in the dark hallway. "Rigid? That's what they called the person who made sure their checks didn't bounce. That's what they called the person who saved them from going out of business." I walked out that night without saying a word. I drove home in silence. I think a part of me knew then that the end was coming. I just didn't expect it to arrive through a text message. And I certainly didn't expect a party hat. Before we see what happens after Skylar's decision and how the Rusty Anchor deals with the sudden loss of $320,000, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave a comment with the name of the city you are watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's see what happens when the money runs out. The change didn't happen right away. It was a slow, creeping cloud. After Kennedy's new branding project started losing money, I expected my parents to panic. I expected them to come back to me, asking for help, asking for the sensible advice that had saved them so many times before. But they didn't. Instead, a strange new way of thinking started at the Rusty Anchor. It was a reality where facts didn't matter, only feelings did. About 6 months before the text message, the mood within my family completely changed. The first thing I noticed was how praise started going to places that felt wrong. Even when nothing serious had changed in the business, when profits were still small and labor costs were still too high, my parents' voices had a new warmth. But that warmth wasn't for me. One Tuesday evening, I walked into the restaurant to drop off the updated payroll schedules. My father, Harrison, was standing near the entrance with a group of local investors, important people he had been trying to impress for years. Kennedy was there, too. She was wearing an expensive dress that I knew she couldn't afford, laughing and holding a glass of wine. I walked up, holding the binder that held the actual survival plan for the business. "And this," my father loudly announced, pointing to Kennedy, "is the creative genius behind our turnaround. Kennedy has completely brought new life to the heart of this place." The investors nodded, smiling at her. Kennedy beamed, loving the attention. "It's all about energy," Kennedy cheerfully added. "We wanted to create a space that breathes." I stood there, feeling invisible. The binder in my hand felt heavy like a brick. One of the investors, a man named Mr. Thorne, looked at me. "And who is this?" My father glanced at me. For a split second, I saw annoyance in his eyes, as if my presence reminded him of the debts, the loans, and the difficult truth. "Oh, that's Skylar," he said quickly, as if I wasn't important. "She helps out with the bookkeeping sometimes, you know, the boring stuff. Helps out." I felt the air leave my lungs. I wasn't just a helper. I was the guarantor. I was the reason the lights were on so they could see each other. I was the reason there was wine in those glasses. I placed the binder on the counter. "I need you to sign the payroll checks, Dad," I said, my voice flat. "Or the cooks don't get paid on Friday." He waved his hand at me without looking. "Not now, Skylar. We're discussing the future. Just leave it in the office." I walked back to the office, the sound of their laughter following me like a tease. That was the moment I realized the story was being rewritten. In this new version of history, the financial rescue I had put together didn't exist. Kennedy was the hero because she made things look pretty. I was the bad guy because I made things real. The erasing of my roles sped up after that night. A few weeks later, a manager quietly came up to me near the loading dock. His name was Ben, a good man who had worked with us for 10 years. He looked nervous. He kept checking over his shoulder to make sure Kennedy wasn't around. "Skylar," he said, his voice low, "I think you should know something." "What is it, Ben?" "Your dad and Kennedy. They had a meeting with the bank yesterday without you." My stomach twisted. "Which bank? First National, the loan officer?" Ben hesitated. "I heard them talking afterwards. Kennedy was saying that your negative energy was holding the business back. She told your dad that if they want to expand, open a second location, they need to make the leadership better. They need to cut the dead weight." "Dead weight?" I stared at Ben, trying to understand their boldness. "Did my father agree?" Ben looked down at his shoes. He said that maybe you had served your purpose. He said that now that the accounts are steady, they don't need a crisis manager anymore. They need a visionary." I thanked Ben and walked away. I didn't confront them. I didn't storm into the dining room and flip a table. I just went back to my apartment and checked the investment account. The $320,000 was still there. As long as that money was there, I thought I was safe. I thought they wouldn't dare push me out because they had to know, that the money was the only thing keeping the dangers away. I was wrong. I underestimated their arrogance, and I overestimated their intelligence. The weeks slowly passed. I became like a ghost walking around. I was removed from the email groups. The shared calendar, which I used to manage supplier deliveries, was locked. When I tried to log in, a message popped up. "Access denied. Contact administrator." The administrator was Kennedy. I stopped going to the restaurant during open hours. I only went late at night to check the numbers, like a thief in my own house. And what I saw scared me. Kennedy was spending money we didn't have. New furniture, expensive advertisements, a consultant who charged $5,000 a month just to pick Spotify playlists for the dining room. The profits I had worked so hard to get were disappearing. But on the outside, everything looked fine. The reviews were good. The Instagram likes were high. My parents were completely fooled by the appearance of success. Then came that Sunday night. We had just finished the records for October. It was, on paper, the best month the restaurant had seen in 5 years. Why? Because the debt changes I had arranged 6 months ago finally started. The interest payments dropped, and the available money improved. My father saw the bank balance and thought he was rich. He didn't understand that the money was already planned for taxes and inventory. He just saw a big number and thought, we did it. And if we did it, then they didn't need me anymore. I was sitting on my couch when the text came. I had just finished reviewing the October report on my laptop, feeling a rare moment of pride. We were safe, finally. Then my phone buzzed. We've decided you should step away for now. The text from Harrison. It wasn't a sudden decision, it was a trap. They had waited until the exact moment the ship stopped sinking to throw the captain overboard. They wanted the stability I had built, but they didn't want the person who built it. I read the message again. Step away for now. It was weak language. For now suggested that I might be allowed back if I behaved, if I begged. It was a power move. They wanted to put me in a timeout, to show me who was really in charge. Then came Kennedy's emoji, the party hat. That was the final confirmation. That was the proof that this wasn't just business, it was personal. Kennedy wanted to be in charge, and my father was too weak, too proud to tell her that her power was not real. I replied, I'll respect that and step away from the family entirely. I didn't tell them about the money. I didn't warn them about the guarantee. If they were the visionaries, surely they had a plan for that, right? I closed the laptop. I withdrew the $320,000. I cut the cord, and then I waited. The silence that followed my leaving lasted exactly 4 days. For 4 days, I lived in a strange, peaceful calm. I went to my corporate job. I came home. I cooked dinner. I slept. I didn't check the bank accounts of the Rusty Anchor because I no longer had access. I didn't drive by the restaurant. I just lived my life, a life that suddenly felt very open and free without the heavy burden of other people's inability. But on the morning of the 5th day, the silence broke. It started with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Miss Schuyler, this is Mark from Atlantic Seafood Supply. Our delivery trucks are at the dock, but the payment card on file has been declined. We can't unload the crab without payment. Please advise. I looked at the phone and smiled. A cold, sad smile. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. An hour later, my phone rang. It was the branch manager of First National Bank. I had known him for years. Schuyler, he sounded frantic. We just got a flag on the business account. The guarantee funds, they're gone. The system automatically froze the operating line of credit. Checks are bouncing all over town. What is going on? I don't know, Jim, I said calmly, sipping my coffee. I'm not involved with the Rusty Anchor anymore. You should call Harrison. I did call Harrison, Jim said, his voice rising. He's screaming at me. He says there's a mistake. He says the money is there. Schuyler, without that $320,000, the loan agreements are broken. I have to call the note due today. I understand, Jim, you have to do your job, and I'm no longer the guarantor. My attorney sent the paperwork over on Monday. Did you get it? There was a long silence on the other end. I see it now. Schuyler, do you know what this is going to do to them? I know exactly what it's going to do, Jim. Have a good day. I hung up. The problems were falling faster than I expected. By noon, the text messages from my family started. First, it was Kennedy. Schuyler, pick up the phone. The bank is acting crazy. Dad is freaking out. Fix this. Fix this. Not please. Not I'm sorry. Just a command. I ignored it. Then my mother. Schuyler, why is the seafood truck driving away? We have a private event tonight. They won't unload the food. Call them right now. I ignored it. Then my father. Schuyler, this isn't funny. Put the money back. We can talk about your role later, but put the money back now. I looked at that message. Put the money back. As if it was his money, as if it was a toy I had taken from the sandbox. I didn't respond. I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb and went to a yoga class. That evening, I heard from Ben, the manager. He called me from his personal cell phone. I answered. Schuyler, he whispered. It's a bloodbath here. Tell me, I said. The suppliers put us on COD, cash on delivery. But we don't have the cash because the bank froze the accounts. We had to take half the menu off tonight. Customers were walking out. Harrison is in the office screaming at the bank. Kennedy is crying in the walk-in freezer. And the staff? I asked. The staff is scared, Schuyler. A payroll check bounced for one of the dishwashers this afternoon. Rumors are flying that we're closing. 3 servers quit on the spot. I felt a pang of guilt for the staff. They were innocent in this. Tell the staff to hang in there, Ben, but tell them to cash their checks at the bank counter, not deposit them. Get the cash while you can. I will, Ben said. Skylar, are you coming back? No, Ben, I said softly. I'm never coming back. The weekend was chaos. My phone showed 47 missed calls from my parents and Kennedy. The voicemails shifted from angry demands to desperate pleading. One voicemail from my father stood out. He sounded smaller than I had ever heard him. Skylar, look, maybe we were hasty. We didn't know the accounts were structured that way. We need that money. Just come in on Monday. We can sit down. Kennedy is willing to let you handle the books again. Kennedy is willing to let me. The arrogance was shocking. Even while drowning, they tried to bargain from a position of power they didn't have. I didn't answer. I spent the weekend painting my living room a bright, cheerful yellow. I bought new plants. I booked a flight to Italy for the spring, something I had wanted to do for 10 years but never could because of the restaurant. On Monday morning, I sent one final email. I copied my attorney, the bank, and my parents. To Harrison and Kennedy, I wrote, I have received your messages. To be clear, the $320,000 was my personal money invested to guarantee your debts. When you terminated my involvement, you terminated that security. I am not a consultant. I am not a bank. I am the daughter you dismissed. I will not be returning. I will not be fixing the money crisis. Good luck with the vision. Sincerely, Skylar. 1 month later, the rusty anchor was gone. It didn't explode. It just slowly disappeared. Without the credit line, they couldn't buy inventory. Without inventory, they couldn't serve customers. Without customers, they couldn't pay the rent. The landlord kicked them out 6 weeks after I left. I heard through town that my father tried to blame the economy. He told people that big companies forced him out. He never mentioned my name. He never mentioned the text message. Kennedy moved back to California. I saw on Instagram that she's now a lifestyle coach. She posts quotes about being strong and about toxic families. I had to laugh at that. My parents had to sell their house to cover the remaining business debts that weren't paid off by the bankruptcy. They moved into a small condo on the other side of town. We haven't spoken since that final email. Sometimes late at night, I wonder if I was too harsh. I wonder if I should have given them a warning. I wonder if I should have left the money in for just 1 more month to let them have an easier change. But then I remember the group chat. I remember the silence from my mother. I remember the coldness of my father's text. And I remember that little party hat emoji. They celebrated my exit. So I let them have exactly what they wanted, a business without me. I learned something important through this process, and the lesson remained simple. Boundaries are not acts of rebellion. They are acts of survival and self-respect, especially within family relationships where old emotions often take the place of being responsible. When you draw a line, you are not abandoning people. You are protecting the part of yourself that allows you to live without feeling bitter, scared, or having hidden debts. True peace appears when you stop trying to get approval from people who only value what you can give them. So I have to ask you, was I the jerk for suddenly taking away their support the same night they kicked me out? Or was it the only way to make them feel the heavy burden of what I'd been carrying alone for years? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? If this story connected with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about real people setting real boundaries. And don't forget to comment below. I read every single one. Thank you for listening.